Tourism in Okay. I'm Marina Novelli, Professor of Tourism and International Development at the University of Brighton and a great fan of Atlas Africa, and hopeful for joining you all again in person very soon. Anyway, with no further ado, I would like to invite our first presenter of this session today, which is on African tourism for Africans. And the first presenter we've got today is Juliet Mpiri, who will be presenting on African tourism, past, present, and future. As you all know, you've got 10 minutes, and then we will actually move to the next session. Please, Juliet, the floor is yours. Juliet, are you there? I think Juliet is not here with us at the moment. So maybe then what we could do, we could move to the next presenter until she joins us. The next presenter is Rosaline Ockett, who will be presenting on Africa, tourism development, lessons, challenges, and prospects. Rosaline, are you there? Yes, I can see you online. I know.
Yes, I'm there. Hi, everyone.
Minutes too. You did not expect to be the first one.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I think it's probably better to keep going because I cannot see.
That's okay. She may join later, so it's just good to keep time. Yes.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you have a presentation to share?
Yes, I do. I do.
Please do share your screen.
Sorry, I started with. Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Rosaline Ockett. I'm a professor here at Tourism Studies in Memorial University of Newfoundland. But right now I'm home. I'm enjoying the sunshine. So I'm very glad to join here from the sunshine, beautiful sunshine country of Kenya. My topic today is African tourism development, lessons and challenges and prospects. And I just want to give a quick overview of the tourism industry in Africa and why I chose to look at this topic, especially given the pandemic that we have gone through. We know that the tourism has contributed, well, according to the 2019 statistics, about $169 billion in the tourism industry in Africa. It has supported 25 million jobs. In 2020, of course, because of the pandemic and all across the world, the industry really received a hit and it just went down to 86 billion. So that is a significant hit of the total, about 3.7% of the total economy. We found the WTTC research found that tourism in Africa is 71% leisure driven and the remainder 29% being business driven. The domestic sector contributes 56% of the international tourism and 44% of tourism to 44% to Africa's tourism industry. So for me, I was very interested and curious in trying to see what other ways that we can be able to fall back in love with Africa. And for me is to be able to promote tourism, Africa for Africans. I have traveled a lot within other European countries and other North American countries, but sadly, I've not really traveled so much within Africa based on the reasons that I'm going to look at much later on in the paper. And perhaps maybe we could be able to do better to be able to promote tourism in Africa for Africans. East Africa, where I'm predominantly from, has lost 4.8 billion and 2 million jobs in 2020. We tend to really rely on tourism sector, and we have received a lot, especially nature tourism. And so this is a significant loss because of COVID-19. The tourism sector within East Africa contributes 10% to the East African Community Partner States, and it accounts for about 17% of export earnings. So anytime there is a pandemic or anytime there is a disruption to the industry, I think we really see a significant drop in terms of revenue. So East Africa alone, I didn't get the research for the whole of Africa, but just East Africa alone will need about 57.8 million to implement the recovery plan, because after the pandemic, we are expecting to recover. It might be slow, but it's still doable. So this is a significant amount that we need to be able to just try to get the tourism sector on the go. We have a lot of potential in the tourism industry. Of course, most destinations are usually around Morocco or Southern Africa, where tourist arrivals are in huge numbers, that they receive a lot of tourist arrivals, foreign arrivals. But it is important that we capitalize on what we have, the assets we have, the resources that we have, to be able to not be so dependent on governments that are maybe perceived to be wealthier, or financial relief for governments that are wealthier. And that is why, for me, I intend to fall in love back with Africa when we promote or try to encourage Africans also to travel within their continent. And of course, we have to support small businesses in this sector as well. And so we don't need to, well, it's good to have foreign travelers and we love visitors, we want people to continue coming, but I think we could be able to boost up the domestic sector and the regional sector within Africa. I got this chart from the WTTC, and you can see the way Africa is still at the bottom at 55% when you're looking at the domestic demand within the regions. And so I think we have, past the threshold of 50%, but I think there's still room for improvement in trying to make sure that our domestic tourism and regional tourism is really at par with the rest of the continents. We have different sectors of the industry: transportation, accommodation, food and beverage, entertainment, and connected industries. And I must say that we have really tried, even just from a country specific in Kenya, the infrastructure has really improved. The connectivity is really improved. Getting from one place to the other is improving, and I think that has to be commended. But the industries can be able to work together and collaborate together to provide a seamless, experience for the visitor even as they come. I did a small chart. This is in no way exhaustive. I just put together most of the popular attractions, and you can see from this chart is very nature oriented, whereas we have other products that you can be able to develop. I've even seen a lot of digital content now where people are trying to, promote other areas where people might not even be aware that you can be able to visit or tour in those particular places. But predominantly, most of the places in Africa are nature oriented, parks, conservation centers. And so I think it's important that we try to now promote other areas and other products within the African sector. I noted that in Africa, we have 98 World Heritage properties spread across 35 countries. And so that is a huge, product that can also be able to be developed so that when people come, they can also experience some of these heritage properties that we have. 54 of them are cultural. And so if we are leaning so much towards the natural areas, then we are neglecting the cultural areas. It's important that we try to create that balance within the World Heritage sites. We have seen that we have a significant drop because of the pandemic, but we cannot keep on blaming the pandemic. We now have to figure out how to move forward and how to be able to continue growing this baby of ours so that it can grow to the significant levels that it was before the pandemic. But I think we have learned a thing or two, especially with the tourism sector, when everything was halted and nobody could be able to travel, especially international travels, when all the airports were closed for international travel. And so I think the pandemic has been an eye-opener for some other areas in which we can be able to promote tourism in the region. We have the tourism revenue by country. I'm not going to go through the chart, it will be in the paper later on, but you can see that by 2019, South Africa was topping Morocco, Tanzania, Mauritius, and Kenya should be just below Mauritius. I'm not sure why it wasn't included in this table. And as you can see, some of the more popular countries that generates tourism in Africa. Prospective business and job creation, we need entrepreneurs, innovators, and think tanks to come on board. There is potential for digital and mobile footprints. And again, like I say, the infrastructure is really, technology has really improved in Africa. And so it's something that needs to be applauded and can be taken advantage of. We need to manufacture local and also help support local so that we support small businesses, because I think the pandemic has really hurt the small businesses. And so that is my take this day, that at least we need to start supporting the small businesses. As there's faster growth in urbanizations, there's tremendous opportunities for businesses and jobs that can be created. And of course, the infrastructure can be improved. So how do you facilitate investment in the sector? We have various options, have given various options. We need to start including other things. We need to be healthier as a continent. We need to have better shopping experiences. We need to embrace our arts and culture, especially in many countries. I've realized that in Africa, we have a beautiful, beautiful arts and culture, but it's not really exposed well. We need to support the communities in the surrounding areas and make investment in those areas. We need to develop human resources, tour guides knowledge and language capacity. We need to enhance the human resources. We need to also look at the political and institutional frameworks that enable tourism. If you don't have support from the government, it's very difficult to facilitate investment in the sector. And I think that many people also fear to invest in Africa just because of the politics. So those frameworks need to be looked into critically. Some of the state-owned corporations could be privately owned for better management and for better service. And so some of these corporations can be looked into to make it into a private sector for better management. So what are the challenges and obstacles? We have the visa issues. Access to Africa for many Africans has become a problem. And that is part of the reason why I've not been able to access many countries, partly because of the visa issue. If you have certain passports, it's very difficult for you to access certain nations in Africa. So if the partner states can be able to work together to make sure that the visa access and the country access is easier, it's better. Marketing and promotion needs to be done either within the region or within the partner states. You can do marketing and promotion as one piece. Tourism information is also necessary. There's some places you want to go, there's no proper tourism information, or the information is inadequate, or the information has not been updated for many years. So that is important for updates, constant updates. Make use of social media platforms. Nowadays, they have a wide range of social media platforms, including TikTok. You could be able to do something on TikTok, and as a tourist, will be able to see and want to visit that place. So we could be able to use that. Another thing, and for me, the key emphasis is believe in ourselves. If you're really going to fall back in love with tourism in Africa, we need to believe in ourselves. I think that sometimes we should change ourselves by not believing in ourselves. Other people are believing in us, whereas we are always suspect about each other. We are suspicious about each other. We are afraid of each other. But we need to believe in ourselves if this is going to go, to materialize. We need to be consistent. We need to be committed to the cause. We need to get a buy-in also from the local tourists. We don't need to segregate that this is a foreigner, so they're treated differently from a local person. And then we need to factor in sustainability, economic, social, cultural, and environmental. We need to tackle corruption. This is a big cancer in Africa. Need to tackle corruption. We just don't have time to talk because it's a huge topic, but I think you would agree with me that this is a beast that needs to be handled. So what are the solutions? Again, we ease travel restrictions.
I apologize, you need to wrap up as quickly.
Yes, I'm wrapping up. Yeah, we ease travel restrictions within Africa, make the visa process easier, make connectivity easy, and have proper infrastructure. We need to have airlines, our own airlines. Our own airlines should, we have very few airlines, so that needs to be increased. Going cashless is now the thing of the day. We have all transactions. Public-private partnerships is important. Cooperation amongst all the partners, the African Union body can be able to play a big part. And then our branding in Africa. What is the Africa brand, and how do we brand Africa if we are to fall in love with it? We need to address the terrorist threats, security and crime, because we have so many advisories, even within Africa. So we need to tackle all these threats. And then finally, we need to address the corruption, and make sure that our political stability is better so that people can be able to travel. So are there any prospects in Africa? Yes, there are. Accessibility, regional tourism is paramount. Service, ICT, public and private sector engagement, government support is necessary, and eliminate all the other issues that have been highlighted. So Africa, yes, we can. Sorry, I took so much time.
That's okay, absolutely. And apologies for
No, that's okay. No, that's okay.
Okay, Judy Kefagona has just joined us. She was having problem with connectivity. So your chair is back on track. She's here and she's going to present the next presenter. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Professor, for holding forth for me. And sorry that I couldn't join earlier. Welcome to this discussion. Thank you, Rosalind, for an enriching discussion. I've looked through the chat and I didn't see any questions yet. But if there are any questions, I will allow you to raise your hand and I will give you a chance if you have any questions for Rosalind. If not, I don't see any hands raised.
Judy, I think the guidelines was to have the conversation at the end after all the presentations. That was the latest guidance we received. So just proceed with the next presentation and we can have the conversation at the end.
Thank you very much. Just to check again whether Juliet has joined us. She was supposed to be the first presenter. She wasn't here at the beginning. If anybody sees Juliet, I can't see her on my list. So I will proceed to the next presenter, who is Alicia, and they will be talking about encouraging travel to the motherland, reflections from a diasporic researcher and traveler. Do we have you with us? Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So give me just 1 second. There we are. Good morning. My name is Elisha Fogel. I'm an assistant professor at California State Polytechnic University, Pomona. And this morning I'm going to be sharing a bit of information, and this presentation is based on my dissertation research from 2020. So the title of today's presentation is Encouraging Travel to the Motherland, Reflections from a Diasporic Researcher and Traveler. And if you're curious, that's me. I'm talking about myself and my experiences. So a little bit of background and literature review. Diasporic researchers oftentimes may face challenges establishing credibility in the locations that they hold relations to. And specifically for myself, during my dissertation data collection, I do not know my specific roots or connections to Africa. So as you can imagine, that would make it a little bit more challenging within the research context. There are also limited studies that have explored the experiences of diasporic researchers, including women, and their role within the research process. And then the experiences of Black persons as travelers, particularly here in the US, have received little attention in tourism literature. And so what we recognize is that and what's important is that Black mobility is also racialized across geographies. So the purpose and research questions for this particular presentation. My purpose is to explore the role of positionality and embodiment of a Black African-American Western scholar on the research process. Some of the questions that emerged, because this ended up being an emerging question within my dissertation data collection, I was asking what perspectives are held by Zambians about African Americans conducting research in Africa? How do positionality and embodiment influence the research process? Because these are integral to qualitative research in particular. From field work and interactions with research team members and participants, as well as up to the interpretation of the data. So I'm looking at the question of, did my Black body, my nationality, gender, and other identities influence the trustworthiness of the research? And then finally, what does it mean to be an African-American researcher conducting research in the diasporic locations in global South settings? So in looking at the method that I used, creative analytic practice can employ diverse forms of art, autoethnography, poetry, narratives, short stories, and allows researchers to engage issues that are connected to our subjectivity, authority, authorship, reflexivity, and representation. And for me specifically, I found that I connected to poetry, but also in thinking about the communities that I was seeking to understand in Livingstone, Zambia. Poetry is one way, and short stories are ways in which communities share knowledge about one another. So it seemed fitting to do that. Within the particular poems that I wrote, I constructed 4 sonnets on my positionality, an acrostic on my embodiment, and then finally, to understand some of those questions, I created a relational poem that includes our voices speaking to answer those questions. To create robustness and trustworthiness within the study, I use collaborative credibility. So if you see here down at the bottom of the screen, there are the data sources that are included with, I'm sorry, can someone mute your mic?
Can you mute your mics, please, so that we can allow Elisha? Please mute your mics. Please mute your mic.
So the data sources that are used to construct these poems, first, I had written reflections from my research assistants. I also conducted interviews with more than 18 participants, but because this was an emerging question, the semi-structured interviews about halfway through, we received additional data to ask them about their perspectives of African Americans. And then I also worked with a women's group and asked them to create written reflections. And then finally for myself, having a reflexive journal and the actual poems that I wrote, the sonnets and the acrostic, are the major data sources to create the relational poem. So these are the 5 poems that I created on positionality and embodiment, which address my race, gender, nationality, my power as a researcher within the research context, and my embodiment, how I look, how I spoke, and how those things entered the experience within research. And I take or drew lines from these poems. And what you will see in this final poem is that the words on the screen represent my voice as a researcher, where the video with pictures represent the reflections and perspectives from the community members, my research assistants, as well as the women's group that I collected data from. So I will play that for you now. When they look at me, what is it they'll see? I trust everyone, whether white or black. We are the same before God. I trust the white man better. When he says he will do something, he will see it comes to pass. When they look at me, what is it they'll see? We see only men. You see everyone. We have the same skin. They felt like you were one of their own. A black person knows that this is their country. She grew amongst the white people. They want everybody to benefit. I do not see any difference between myself and them. I see them to be the same as I am. When they look at me, what is it they'll see? Will they see past my very Western physique? You not being a white enables me to open up. I thought you were white because of your accent. If you weren't white, I would not have been as open. You did not judge me based on my outward appearance. You made me feel so comfortable to share my experiences with you. I would have shared the intimate aspects that I shared with you had you been white. African American researchers do well in trying to blend in. White people have difficulties in that. When they look at me, what is it they'll see? Even though our culture is different than yours. With the African American, we have similar culture. I felt that African Americans could understand the local community better. They are from overseas. They will understand a quarter of the African lifestyle. When they look at me, what is it they'll see? Will you rebuke my blackness and call bluff? Moreover, will my black be black enough? She can't travel all this way to come and deceive us. Blood is thicker than water. She grew up in America, but she is black like one of us. African Americans will have an idea of the village lifestyle here in Africa. When they look at me, what is it they'll see? Can I create new thoughts and opinions? It's theirs, I hope to tweak. I have never worked with a foreign. Honesty depended on their exposure to foreigners. You had passion and knew how to interact with different people. I was challenged by your being impartial and respect for people's time. Zulu researchers are so cold. You smiled a lot. It showed you appreciated my presence. Your race influenced my openness with you, but so much your approach to the whole process. When they look at me, what is it they'll see? I must be better than those who've come along. Some white people come with selfish intentions. The black man does not come with other motives. You treated each person with utmost respect. Certain people are afraid to talk to the white man. Whites may just get information to degrade our society. When they look at me, what is it they'll see? Withhold my power and bear your jewels. She identified a need and respected us. That's why she has come. The reception we received in the community was encouraging. More African American researchers need to do research here in Africa. I would choose an African American, but then again, no African American has come. It feels like my own child coming home, and they might come back to help. African Americans would use the information for the good of the country. She is concerned about her fellow Black people, and this makes me very happy. So that is the end. I know that I'm out of time. I'm actually over time, but I just want to point to some of the things that you heard within the video, specifically that intentionality and approach within the research process are critical, and that there are assumptions held on both sides from my reflections in my poems, understanding or questioning, how I would be seen or perceived within the communities that I was speaking with, but recognizing that those assumptions occur on both sides of the research process. So I'd be happy to answer any questions at the end of all of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elisha, for that different kind of presentation and approach to research and how you are able to share it via poems. I know we'll have questions at the end of it, but because of time, I would now like to invite Juliet, who has joined us. Juliet, you have 10 minutes. You start now. We need to observe time because we have overrun our time. We need to finish 5 minutes to the hour, and we're waiting for our questions. Welcome, Juliet Mushiri.
Thank you, Judy. I appreciate these moments. And so basically, for me, what I'll be talking about is African tourism, past, present, and future. And I'll just be looking at how Africa has rejuvenated its tourism between the last, between 2010, in the last 10 years. Or 20, you can talk about the last 10 years because a lot has changed in Africa. And it's all about technological advancement. Sorry, I hope everyone can get me clearly. So I'm sharing my screen and so I'm a PhD candidate at Rovira Virgili University in Spain, but I'm based in Kenya. So I'll just talk about Africa in general without picking any specific destinations. And so this is just an image, about Africa and the varieties of attractions and the tourism forms that we have. We have a lot of wildlife. We have a lot of, nature tourism. We have very beautiful beaches. And other than that, we are growing in terms of artificial tourism, so so when you look at Africa within the last 10 years, it has really grown in terms of the numbers coming to Africa. There are places that were previously, unexploited. People really never knew about these places, but now due to social media, a lot of marketing by DMOs, that is destination marketing organizations, these places are currently known. And then we had issues with, accessibility. And I can tell you for sure that a lot has changed in terms of accessibility. We have very, very good roads currently being built towards these particular attractions. And all this is due to, economic growth. There's we have had political issues, but now we're experiencing stability in terms of politics, in terms of leadership and, the politics. When you talk of the macro factors such as politics, these are the issues that affect destinations. And in Africa, this has been a big issue, politics, insecurity, the issues to do with terrorism, and then cancer pandemic that is bringing everything to a halt. So, but then with this stabilizing, we are seeing numbers really going up. And we have amenities that were previously not there that are actually being built. International standards hotel being built in Africa. And this is just a graph showing the tourism arrivals in Kenya between 2010 and 2021. So this is just a simple graphical representation. And you can see how the numbers have been going up. Of course, between 2019 2021, the issue of pandemic came and really affected the number of visitors coming in. But now with the opening, with travel opening and people able to move up and down, the numbers are also going up. But we were on a path to, to growth before that is COVID. So we can talk of growth strategies, and how the economic and political environment has really affected, or rather affected tourism. And you can talk of the benefits of this promising trend emerging in developing countries, especially in sub-Saharan countries like Kenya, where I come from. We have investors coming in, we are attracting big investors. And maybe just to show you one of a very, very nice hotel that is It's called Mahali Mzuri. Mahali Mzuri is one of the hotels owned by Richard Branson. It's located at the Masai Mara Game Reserve. It's a luxury tented camp, and it attracts, the who is who in the world. And Masai Mara is a very, very nice place. You have a lot of wildlife. Anyone who just wants to come and relax, enjoy the nature around this place, you find most of them going and booking reservations at Mahali Mzuri. Mahali Mzuri, owned by Richard Branson, is not the only one. We have very many others located in different parts of the country where new attractions have come up and that were previously inaccessible. So this is an image of Radisson Blu in the capital of Rwanda, in Kigali. And you can see Rwanda between 1994 and now, the genocide, when genocide happened, the country went back, but now the country has grown, investors coming in. We have the capital growing, attracting business, tourists, and hence the coming up of very many international standards hotels. And just to also point out, this is just an image of tourists enjoying a game drive at the Mara Game Reserve. We have other attractions or rather reserves in Africa other than Mara, only that today I'm just focusing on this particular one. And we can read from this how countries have taken charge of their tourism in order to market them, not just the governments, but also the private investors. They're taking charge of their tourism in order to increase the tourism numbers. Yes, so this is just a new expressway, a city expressway that is under construction in order to enable, accessibility from the city to the airport in Nairobi City. And Nairobi City has very many MICE tourists coming in, and this is just to ease congestion and enable people to travel, to come from the airport to access the city very effectively. And on that, you can see this is a mall, one of the many malls that have been constructed in Kenya, and this is called Two Rivers Mall. And Two Rivers Mall houses a 5-star hotel. It has most of the international brands, as well as fun and leisure activities. So this is just one of the very many malls that we have in the country that have been attracting a lot of visitors, from the neighboring countries, who want to shop, shoppers, tourists who are actually shoppers, who want access to the international brands that are otherwise not in their country. And this is a form of tourism that is taking shape, not just in Kenya, but in many parts of Africa. So I'd like to end my short presentation there, and hoping that in future we're going to have new forms of tourism activities or attractions, especially looking at artificial tourism. And I would give an example of Disney World, which we all know that is the form that we are hoping to actually capture new product development in that area. And maybe not really moving away from the traditional forms of tourism, but rather to supplement the traditional forms of tourism. Thank you. I now will welcome any questions or comments.
Thank you, Juliet. You just finished on time. We are going to take all our questions and comments at the end. And because of the time that we have, we'll now invite our last presenter, who is Lynette. Lynette, you're here. I can see you. Please take it over for 10 minutes and we will have 5 minutes of interaction. Thank you. In the meantime, I encourage you to share any questions you might have. It will be easier on the chat. That will enable the presenters to respond to you directly if we do not have time to take all the questions in the plenary. So please go ahead and use the chat. Thank you and welcome, Lynette.
Thank you, Judy. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lynette Govender from the Department of Historical and Heritage Studies at the University of Pretoria. My topic is ethnic identity and culture as drivers of travel choice, the case of the South Africans as domestic tourists. I would like to thank the organizers of Atlas Africa for this opportunity to present my research to you. This study is based on social identity theory. Henry Tachfal, a social psychologist, formulated CIT in 1979 with his student, John Turner. He was born in Poland. He moved to against citizens occupied France in World War II. He was sent to a concentration because he was Jewish. He survived concentration camps to discover all his family and most of his friends were murdered. This had a profound impact on him, and he based his life's work on his experiences. He examined theories such as social judgment, nationalism, cognitive aspects of prejudice, and social identity theory. Is a person's sense of who they are based on their group membership, for example, social class, family, football team, etc. CIT is divided into three sections: social categorization, social identification, and social comparison. Social categorization divides people into two groups: an in-group, which is us, and an out-group then. If we can assign people to a category, then that tells us things about those people. We also find out things about ourselves by knowing what categories we belong to. In this study focused on South Africa, each population group, South African, Black, Colored, Indian, and White, has their own category. I've created an example in the slide to depict this better. The blocks contain important ethnic and cultural elements. We must determine which elements that each group considers when making travel choices. I've actually created one for me, an in-group for the net, and the out-group is obviously you. In social identification, we adopt the identity of the group that we feel that we belong to. The first image refers to people all being alike. The second image shows diversity. The third image shows something about me categorized as a student. I adopt the identity of a student and act in the ways I believe students act. An individual can belong to many groups. Belonging has many layers. Example, me, I'm a South African Indian group. I'm in the student group. I'm in the parent group. I will feel an emotional significance to each group that I belong to. In social comparison, we should stop comparing. Each group is different, but we have similarities. The first image on foot, some mutual commonalities are listed. Group travel behavior may differ. Most South African whites enjoy bush vacations, also known as safaris for the international visitors, but most South African Indians do not. Group travel behavior may coincide. All families want free Wi-Fi for their children. This theory tells us that even though we are similar, but we belong in different groups, and each group wants personalized products that meets their needs. So when we're looking at the history of ethnic identity and culture, we look at Africa as a continent. This cartoon is the Scramble for Africa. German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck divides the African continent amongst the colonial powers in 1884 at the Berlin Conference. Most of Africa was colonized. These countries were built on European values. Modern Africa is a European product. The indigenous values, institutions, and heritage were largely ignored. We need to resurrect indigenous values, otherwise we are building on shaky ground. So this slide is formulated by Mark Leo Felix, 2002, in a Harvard study on ethnic diversity. Each color corresponds with an ethnic group, the majority in the region. Enormous ethnic diversity in Western and Central Africa. Ethnicity can and does change over time. And if you look at Africa, you can basically only see like one population group. So this is ethnic identity in South Africa, a true reflection. So we have four major population groups. The Blacks is 80.7%, includes many different tribes and languages. The Coloreds are 8.8%, which is mixed race. They are descendants of the Khoisan, the Whites, the Africans, and Asians. And the Whites themselves are 8%, Afrikaans, Dutch, English, Scottish, Portuguese, Greek, and Italian. And the Indians are 2.5%. They came from India in 1860 as indentured laborers to work in the sugarcane plantations as well as free Indians. Also included in this 2.5% are other Asians such as Chinese. I gave you a representation here of the 4 race groups I've mentioned: the Black representation, Mzozi Bini Tunzi, Miss South Africa, Miss Universe; Trevor Noah, colored, Swiss German. His father was Swiss German, his mom was Xhosa, and he's a famous comedian. Devi Sankri, governor and investigative journalist, representing the Indian, and obviously the white is Dale Steyn, is a famous cricketer. And so I just showed you the 4 representations, but this slide shows how complicated ethnicity is. There are many layers in each population group. So the cultural identity, in this slide, I incorporated an overview of some typical reasons for travel and which aspects will particularly influence travel choice. Some examples are destination choice, like the whites like to go to safari camping. Then there's the things like the food, which is let's Commons Braai, and then there's the bunny chows, and then there's sampan beans and boboti for the coloreds, and obviously cultural activities as well. Then I looked holistically. When you're studying anything, you have to look at the holistic landscape of the tourism industry. And we all know that from 2019 to 2020, GDP had fallen from 10.4 to 5.5%, and travel and tourism jobs from 334 million to 272, that's minus 61%. Then I obviously looked at Africa, same story here, 49% for GDP, 29% for jobs in tourism, and the visitor impact was interesting, 61% to 20 billion US dollars a year, which is a minus 66%. And then look at the domestic, how much it has also dropped as well, but not as bad as the international visitors. Then obviously I looked at South Africa because that's where I'm from. And same story here, GDP fallen by minus 49%, tourism jobs by minus 32%. And then the visitor impact here, 134 billion rands to 45.7 billion rands. That's a minus 66%. And then I looked at the domestic market, and that was only minus 42%. So this for me was important because this shows that how much we have relied on domestic tourism during COVID and lockdown, and how important domestic tourism is. Then my next slide, I looked at South Africa has such diversity in its tourist attractions. In this slide, I used some coastal destinations. I used the very famous Golden Mile in Durban, and obviously Cape Town, which attracts a lot of visitors to both of them. But the #1 regional destination for domestic tourism is actually Durban. Subtropical climate, it's good all year round to travel. Sodwana is a niche tourist destination for scuba diving, and Hermanus is a niche tourist destination for whale watchers or casual tourists. Then I looked at the different provinces and what it had to offer. Mpumalanga, the Blade River Canyon, the Northern Cape, the Motherland, and the Eastern and Western Cape, it's Tsitsikamma National Park, and obviously KwaZulu-Natal, the Drakensberg Mountain, which featured in that movie 2012. Attracts nature lovers and casual tourists to all these destinations. And then Gauteng is Marapeng, the cradle of humankind, attracts tourists interested in the history of mankind. But Gauteng attracts more business travel because it's the economic hub for South Africa. The Northwest Province, Lost City, Sun City attracts gamblers and family resort, quick leisure destination for people living in Gauteng, lots of family activities. And then obviously Limpopo and Mpumalanga, the Kruger National Park, attracts mostly South African white visitors. Sand Parks is researching on how to attract the other population, Blacks, Coloreds, and Indians, to increase market share.
Dr. Lynette,
I've come to the end of our presentation, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all our presenters this morning for very insightful discussions. I will go straight to the questions that we have. And 2 of these questions are for Dr. Elisha. There is a question, the first one, Professor Marina was first to ask a question, and she requested that she wanted to verbalize this. Professor, go ahead. We
Yes.
have just about 6 minutes.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. Thanks, Alicia, for your presentation. I think it was extremely inspiring in the way you approached it. And I must say, very original, having supervised many PhD students, and certainly take note for the future. I was taken by one of the claims that was made in your video, which is to do with Black people don't come with the other motives. Now, I've observed in other diaspora type of experiences, particularly in West Africa over the last few years, exactly the same kind of behaviors being perpetrated by outsiders. And I would just define outsiders of any ethnic background. And so my question is, how do we make sure that some of the potential assumption and mistakes does not create even further polarization between the ethnic groups? So I just would like to have your views on that, on the matter.
This is a fantastic question. So I'm so glad you verbalized it, because I think I may have gone a little bit of a different way. You know, as you were listening to the poem, and again, as the pictures were going, those were the perspectives of the locals. And one of the things I said at the end of the presentation is that assumptions are held on both sides of the research process. So you enter research as a scholar, and you hold these assumptions about what's going to happen. So I was concerned about how I would be accepted. You know, was my Black enough? Would people still talk to me? And then from the other perspectives, in the very first part of the poem, someone even mentioned that they trusted white people more than they trust Black people, because white people get things done. And so I think it also has to do with the exposure. And in the poem, one of my research assistants said, you know, their level of trust and their understanding was based on their exposure. So that's why this kind of calls for the need to have more African diasporic researchers doing research on the continent, because there are many assumptions that are held from my Western perspectives, but also from locals. And I imagine that it's not just Zambians, this is across the continent, right? And so for the countries that have even less exposure to tourists, they may hold different or even deeper, you know, negative or positive assumptions. So hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have another question, Dr. Elisha. There's a question for Dr. Rosalind, but Rosalind, I have suggested, because this is a direct request for more insights, that you can get in touch with Dr. Helena, maybe here on chat directly, and answer that question. But there is another question for you very quickly. I'll give you a minute to answer. And this is from Lemi Mwalala. And Lemi is asking, what prompted you to select this very interesting research design? In
Very
one
good.
sentence, then we can move on.
Yes. So historically, poetry in the country of Zambia has been limited due to the lack of resources to be able to print basic resources. And so when I chose the type of creative analytic practice, it seemed most appropriate, and it also aligns and is akin to African epistemologies and lenses and ways of thought. So that's why I selected poetry in this particular research.
Thank you again, Dr. Elisha. And now another question from Lemi. Lemi is asking Juliet. Juliet, how do we reconcile the environmental destruction that comes from infrastructure development to support tourism? In the case of Nairobi, we have seen the destruction of national parks, the Nairobi National Park and Tsavo National Parks, for the creation of the standard gauge railway going from Nairobi to Mombasa. And we also know that there's been a lot of outcry and cutting down of trees for the expressway from the airport to transport travelers. And Kenyans are saying, residents are saying, we had more pressing needs than an express highway to serve a minority of our community. What is your take, Juliet, in 1 minute? Juliet, are you here?
While she's waiting to respond, Judy, I've responded to Dr. Helena. Any other person can see on the chart. I just listed the points
Yes.
to the question. Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah. Yep. And because Juliet is not here, I can see Juliet, but she's not responsive. Maybe the last one, Dr. Roslyn, is what type of domestic tourism is happening now in Africa? And I wanted to ask you a question as well. Okay. Is the aspiration for Brand Africa to develop tourism for Africans, or is the
Sorry, I lost you there. Hello?
Yes, we lost you. We can hear you.
Yes, yeah, okay. I didn't get the last part of your question. Is the inspiration of the brand tourism?
Brand Africa, an inspiration to develop tourism for Africans or to develop tourism for the international market?
Thank you so much for the questions. My first priority would be to brand Africa, to develop tourism for Africa. I think it's about time we now started really embracing our continent. I'm happy for visitors. I have no problem with visitors, but I think we need to travel more within the region. Even just in Kenya, there's so many programs right now that are showcasing so many tourist spots that I had personally had no idea about. So I think we could be able to brand properly. Every country or every region or every partner states can do their own. But I think as a whole, we need to start believing in ourselves. And even as one of the highlights that I have pointed out for Dr. Helena, we need to really believe in ourselves and buy in from the locals as well, even as much as we are embracing the foreign travel. With regards of domestic tourism happening right now, I see a lot of culture and art that are being promoted, especially within East Africa. But I would like to see more of wedding destinations. A quick search, I saw places like the islands, like Seychelles and Zanzibar and Mauritius are the key wedding destinations that you find within Africa. And of course, South Africa is also included in the list. But I'd like to see even Kenya really become one of the wedding destinations where people can be able to come and get married. And of course, this is subject to marketing and promoting, and again, just believing in ourselves that you can be able to do it. So
thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the presenters this morning and everyone who joined this session. We have come to the end of our session, and now I've got to release this group so that we can join other breakout rooms in readiness for the next presentation of choice. Thank you very much. We believe in Africa. Africa is our business, and we will develop tourism for Africa. Thank you.